The sound was the first thing to break the world, not the storm, which had been a howling biblical monster for 6 hours, but the sound under the storm. It was a low, resonant groan, like a giant waking up angry. It vibrated through the floor of the Humvee ambulance up Sergeant Anya Sharma's spine and rattled her teeth. What the hell was that? PFC Riley, her driver, was all of 19. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel, his eyes wide behind the thwack, thwack, thwack of the overworked wipers. "Pull up, now," Anya commanded. Her voice was calm, the product of training that sanded away panic and left only procedure. They were on the Keystone Bridge, a massive, aging expanse of steel and concrete that spanned the Ravinia River. It was the main artery into the city, and right now it was a parking lot in the middle of a hurricane-level storm. They were part of a convoy of National Guard units, rerouted from drill to active flood duty. "Sarge, I can't." "The convoy?" "I don't care about the convoy, Riley. I care about the physics." That sound was wrong. As if to punctuate her sentence, the bridge dropped. It wasn't a fall, it was a lurch. A sickening, gut-twisting dip of several feet that sent a wave of red taillights flickering ahead of them as a dozen cars slammed on their brakes. Then came the real sound, a high-tensile steel cable. Thicker than Anya's waist and soaked with 30 years of rain and rust, snapped. It didn't just break, it detonated. The cannon shot of it was so loud it momentarily deafened her. A whip crack that echoed off the river valley, followed by the shrieking, tearing scream of metal under impossible stress. Riley screamed. Ahead of them, the roadway simply vanished. The section of bridge carrying 20 cars and a semi-truck buckled, tore free, and plunged into the black, churning water 60 feet below. The Humvee's headlights now illuminated nothing but a jagged cliff of torn asphalt and a curtain of driving rain. Chaos. Anya didn't hesitate. Her training wasn't a manual, it was muscle memory. She unbuckled, grabbed her CLS aid bag from the bulkhead, and keyed her radio. "Command, this is Victor 2 Alpha. The Keystone Bridge is down. I repeat, the Keystone is down. Catastrophic failure. We are at the point of collapse. Multiple vehicles in the water. I am dismounting to triage." She slammed the door open. The wind ripped it from her hand. "Riley!" "Hi," she yelled over the roar. "Stay with the rig. Keep that radio hot. Light up the edge with the searchlight. Do not move from this cab. You copy?" "Sarge, you can't." "You copy?" "Yes, Sergeant, I copy." Anya stepped out into the apocalypse. The wind was a solid wall shoving her back. The rain felt like needles. The bridge was a living, groaning thing beneath her boots. She moved forward, low and fast, toward the new, ragged edge. Screams. They were everywhere, thin and lost in the greater noise of the storm. She clicked on her headlamp, its beam cutting a weak cone into the dark. Her eyes scanned the wreckage. A car dangled precariously off the edge, its back wheels spinning. But she was moving toward a different sound, a repetitive thud. Someone was trapped. A blue Ford F-150 was crushed, its front half flattened by a fallen piece of the superstructure. The thudding was a man inside, weakly hitting the glass. Anya scrambled over a buckled guardrail. "Hold on, National Guard, I'm coming to you!" She reached the driver's side. The window was shattered. Inside was a man, middle-aged, his face a mask of blood. His leg was pinned. A piece of rebar and console had impaled his thigh, pinning him to the floor. The blood was bright, arterial. "What's your name?" Anya yelled, her voice hoarse. "Mark." "Mark Chen," he gasped, his eyes rolling. "Okay, Mark, I'm Sergeant Sharma. I'm a medic. You're bleeding badly. This is going to hurt." She didn't wait for a reply. She ripped open her bag, her fingers finding the tourniquet by feel. She threaded it high and tight on his upper thigh. "Tell me when it's tight," she said, pulling the windlass. He just grunted. "Tighter," she said to herself. She twisted, the bleeding slowed. He screamed, a thin, gurgling sound. "Good, that's good. Now we get you out." She looked at the pin. She couldn't move it. "Mark, can you move your other leg?" I think so." "Mark, listen to me. I'm going to try and—" That's when she heard the second groan. It was louder this time, deeper. It was the sound of the main pylon giving up. She looked up past the rain and saw it. The massive concrete tower, the one holding all the remaining cables, was tilting. It was coming down, right on top of them. She had no time. Not to run, not to pull him, not even to think. It was just instinct. A selfless, stupid, absolute instinct. "The report," Mark moaned, clutching a soaked leather briefcase on the passenger seat. "My report. They have to—" "Cover your head!" Anya screamed. She grabbed the doorframe, wedged her boot against the transmission hump, and threw herself over him. She was a trained soldier. She was wearing a helmet and a full IOTV body armor vest. He was a civilian in a polo shirt. It was the only math that mattered. She covered his head and torso with her own body, bracing her back against the collapsing roof, her helmet facing the sky. She had just enough time for one thought. This is going to be bad. The pylon collapsed. The world ended. A storm of concrete, rebar, steel cable, and asphalt slammed into the truck. The sound was total, a physical weight that crushed all other senses. The truck's cab imploded. Anya felt a hot spike as the roof slammed into her left shoulder, shattering her clavicle. Her helmet cracked with a sound like a gunshot, the force whipping her head back. The weight on her back was unimaginable, pressing the air from her lungs, then silence. A ringing, high-pitched, metallic silence. She was in absolute darkness, pinned, her face pressed against the engineer's damp shirt. She tasted blood and concrete dust. She was alive. She tried to move. A bolt of white-hot agony shot from her shoulder and down her spine. She gasped, but her ribs felt like broken glass. Faintly from underneath her, she heard a voice, a wet, terrified whisper. "You're alive?" Anya tried to answer. She tried to say, "Stay with me." But the darkness at the edge of her vision was closing in. The ringing sound was fading, replaced by a soft, welcoming static. She lost consciousness, her body still a rigid shield over the man she'd just met. Waking up was a slow, agonizing swim from a deep, dark ocean. The first sensation was not pain, but light. A sterile, rectangular, fluorescent light embedded in an acoustic-tiled ceiling. It was too bright. It hummed. The second sensation was the smell. Antiseptic, stale coffee, and floor wax. The third was the pain. It was everywhere. A searing hot spike in her left shoulder, a deep crushing ache in her back and ribs, a dull pounding drumbeat behind her eyes that matched the rhythmic beep, beep, beep of a machine beside her. Anya tried to move her left arm. It was a mistake. A white-hot nova of agony erupted from her clavicle, and she bit back a cry, her teeth grinding. She looked down. Her arm was in a heavy plaster cast, immobilized against her chest. An IV line snaked into her right hand. "Ah, you're with us." The voice was low, tired, and female. A woman in blue scrubs stood at the foot of her bed, looking at a tablet. She was tall, black, with her hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. Her name tag read, Dr. Lena Washington, Chief of Surgery. "Where?" Anya's voice was a dry croak. "Mercy General Hospital. You came in about 6 hours ago, Sergeant. You were a mess." Dr. Washington didn't look up from her tablet. "You're lucky to be alive. Severe concussion. Comminuted fracture of the left clavicle. That means it was in pieces. We had to put a plate in. 3 fractured ribs, one of which was displaced, and severe spinal bruising. You're going to be here a while. You're also on a heavy-duty pain drip, so you're going to feel floaty." The engineer," Anya whispered. "Mark, was he—" Dr. Washington finally looked up. Her eyes were exhausted but sharp. "He's in the ICU. He'll live. He lost his leg below the knee. The one you put the tourniquet on. You saved his life, Sergeant. The pressure you applied when you did whatever you did, kept him from bleeding out. The surgical team said your TQ application was perfect." Anya let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. He was alive. It worked. "Rest, Sergeant," Dr. Washington said, her voice a little softer. "You've done enough." The doctor left, and Anya was alone with the beep of the monitor and the hum of the light. She turned her head. A small television was mounted in the corner. It was on, but muted. The screen showed the wreckage of the Keystone Bridge. It was daylight now. Helicopters swarmed the scene like angry wasps. The bottom of the screen had a chyron. State of emergency. Keystone Bridge collapse. Then the scene cut to a man at a podium flanked by American flags. He was handsome with silvering hair and a face built for concern. Anya recognized him instantly. Governor Richard Thompson. He was in the middle of a speech, his voice low and somber. Anya fumbled for the remote by her bed, her fingers thick and clumsy. She found the volume button. "A tragedy beyond words," Governor Thompson was saying, his voice filling the room. "An unprecedented 100-year storm that battered our state and struck at our very infrastructure. But in this dark hour, we see the bright light of American heroism. While the full story is still coming together, we know that brave men and women were on that bridge, fighting to save lives." The door to her hospital room swished open. "Sharma, you're awake, atta girl!" Anya winced. The voice was a parade ground boom in the quiet room. Colonel Evans, her battalion commander, strode in. He was immaculate in his pressed uniform, his face flushed with something, excitement. He was followed by a young aide in a suit who was already holding up a smartphone, the flash firing. Anya blinked, spots dancing in front of her eyes. "Sir," she managed. "You're a hero, Sergeant. A goddamned hero," Evans boomed, stopping us safe 10 feet from her bed. He gestured grandly at the television. "Listen, the governor is about to thank us. The whole guard." On the screen, Governor Thompson was continuing. "Tonight, I want to single out one man who, from the moment of collapse, took command of the situation. A man who coordinated a flawless multi-agency rescue, directing resources, and saving dozens of lives from a state of total chaos. A true American hero, Colonel Evans." Anya stared. The camera panned to a live shot of Evans standing right next to the governor, looking humble and resolute. Wait, that was a live shot. The man in her room was... Anya's head spun. The pain meds, the concussion. She looked from the man in her room to the man on the TV. They were identical. "Sir, I don't understand," she whispered. "It's a live feed, Sharma," Evans said, mistaking her confusion. "I was there with him, but I told him I had to be here when my best soldier woke up. Had to thank you personally." He was at the press conference Anya's foggy brain supplied. He wasn't on the bridge. He was 20 miles away at the command post. "But," she started, I was... "And the governor wants to thank you too," Evans said, cutting her off. On the TV, Thompson's face was grave. "Our hearts also go out to the brave civilian engineer, Mr. Mark Chen, who, according to reports, was heroically trying to warn other drivers of the danger when he was tragically injured in the pylon collapse. A true Good Samaritan." The blood drained from Anya's face, leaving a cold, sick feeling that had nothing to do with her injuries. Warn other drivers? He was trapped. "Sir," Anya said, her voice stronger now, cutting through the fog, that's not what happened. I pulled him from the truck. He was pinned. The pylon, it came down on us. I covered him." Colonel Evans' broad political smile tightened. Just a fraction. He turned to the aide. "Son, wait outside. Give the sergeant her privacy." The aide, looking confused, nodded and backed out of the room. Evans's demeanor changed instantly. The proud commander evaporated, replaced by a cold, appraising administrator. He walked closer to her bed. "Sergeant," he said, his voice a low, hard-edged thing. "Dr. Washington's report is very clear. You have a severe concussion, a traumatic brain injury. Your memory is a mess." "No, sir, I remember. I remember the tourniquet. I remember the pylon falling. I used my body armor to..." "You remember chaos, Sergeant. You remember noise and fear, which is what any soldier would, but we, the state, the guard, need a clear, unified message." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "The governor is grateful. The guard is grateful. You're a hero for being on that bridge. You're getting a medal, I'll make sure of it, but don't muddy the waters. You were injured. You were dazed. Colonel Evans directed the rescue. Mark Chen was a hero. That's the story. Do you understand me?" Anya stared at him. This wasn't a mistake. It was a script. You're lying, she whispered, the words tasting like ash. You're taking credit. You're giving him. I'm clarifying a chaotic situation, Sergeant, Evans snapped, his eyes like ice. You're a soldier. You follow the chain of command. Your command right now is to rest and recover, and to let the leadership handle the press. You're a hero, Sharma. Don't ruin it by trying to be a star. He straightened his uniform, the proud commander back in an instant. He turned and walked to the door. Get some rest, Sergeant, he said, his voice booming again for anyone who might be listening. You've earned it. The door swished shut, leaving Anya Sharma alone in the humming, sterile light, the beep, beep, beep of the monitor sounding like a mocking laugh. They weren't just wrong. They were actively, deliberately stealing the truth. And they were using her own injuries as the weapon to do it. The next 48 hours were a masterclass in psychological containment. Anya wasn't a patient, she was a prisoner. The first privilege to go was her connection to the outside world. My phone, she'd asked a young nurse. It was in my pocket or in the ambulance. Can I? Oh, sweetie, the nurse said, fluffing her pillow with practiced, impersonal kindness. All your personal effects were lost in the collapse. Gone. We'll get you a new one. Don't you worry. But for now, you just focus on healing. Can I use the one at the nurse's station? I need to call my unit. I need to call my parents. The nurse's smile became strained. Doctor's orders, Sergeant. You're on strict concussion protocol. No screens, no phones. Too much stimulus. And per the governor's office, your visitors are restricted to essential personnel for your recovery. You're a VIP. Anya felt a cold dread seep into her. Per the governor's office. She was isolated, trapped in a high-tech room with a broken body, a foggy head, and a television that was now her personal tormentor. Colonel Evans was everywhere. He was on the morning news, pointing at maps of the bridge, using phrases like command and control and asset allocation. He described the heroic rescue he'd overseen. He never mentioned her name. He just referred to the brave men and women on the ground. She was one of them. Anonymous, buried. On the third day, the real cleaner arrived. He didn't knock. He was a man in his 40s with a forgettable face, a cheap-looking gray suit, and a very expensive-looking watch. He carried a worn leather briefcase. He looked like an accountant, but his eyes were sharp and dead. Sergeant Anya Sharma? He asked, his voice a flat monotone. Yes, who are you? My name is Davis. I'm with the state investigator's office. He pulled a chair up to her bed, not asking permission. He clicked open a pen and pulled out a small, official-looking notepad. I just need to clear up your official statement for the state record, a formality. I gave a statement to Colonel Evans. Yes, Davis said with the thinnest wisp of a smile. Colonel Evans' report is what triggered this follow-up. He noted some discrepancies, signs of confusion, likely from your TBI. We just want to get your memories locked down before they degrade. Anya felt her hands clench. My memory is fine. Good, excellent. He clicked his pen. So, let's start from the top. You were on the bridge, the storm was severe, you exited your vehicle against the orders of your convoy commander, correct? Anya's breath hitched. There was no order. I am the crew commander. I dismounted to render aid. Right. Davis scribbled a note. You dismounted in the chaos. You located Mr. Chen's vehicle. Then the pylon collapsed and you were both struck by debris. You lost consciousness. He stated it as a fact, a done deal. No, Anya said, her voice shaking with a sudden, hot rage. That is not what happened. I got to his truck. He was pinned. I applied a tourniquet to his right leg. I saved his life before the pylon fell. Then I heard it coming down. I covered his body with my own, my armor, my helmet. I shielded him. That is how I got these injuries. That is how he survived. Davis didn't look up. He just kept nodding, his pen moving. Right. You believe you shielded him. A very heroic thought. But Dr. Washington's report states your injuries, the clavicle, the ribs, are consistent with a crushing impact from the side and above. The same impact that hit Mr. Chen's truck. You were both struck. You were injured. You lost consciousness. In your disoriented state, you fell over him. Anya felt like she was going to be sick. He was twisting everything. He was using her own medical report against her. I... It's understandable, Sergeant, Davis said, his voice becoming paternal, condescending. It was worse than a yell. You're a hero. You were in an explosion. Your mind is trying to make a story out of the chaos. It's a classic symptom of PTSD. You want your sacrifice to have meaning, and it does. You were there. You were injured in the line of duty. I don't have PTSD, Anya spat. I am telling you the truth. The truth, Davis said, finally looking up, his dead eyes locking onto hers, is what the official record says. And the official record, based on Colonel Evans's after-action report and the governor's timeline, says you were a hero injured in the collapse. Anya's frustration boiled over. You are lying. Colonel Evans is lying. The governor is lying. Why? Why are you doing this? Davis's smile vanished. The mask was off. His voice was a steel blade. Sergeant, let's be very clear. The governor is managing a multi-billion-dollar state disaster. Colonel Evans is a decorated officer. You are a sergeant with a severe head injury and a history of, let's see. He pulled a different paper from his briefcase. Her service record. A history of difficulty with authority, he read. A disciplinary note from your last CO for overstepping the chain of command during a training exercise. Anya went cold. That was a year ago. She'd filed a safety violation report after a sergeant ignored a heat stroke victim. She'd been right, but she'd been disruptive. You have my file, she whispered. We have everything, Sergeant Sharma. We're the state, Davis said softly. You have a choice. You can be the hero of the Keystone, a brave soldier who got banged up but who is tough as nails and healing fast. The whole state will love you. You'll get your medal. Your career will be golden. He leaned in. Or you can be the confused sergeant, the disgruntled soldier, the one with the TBI and a history of insubordination who is making accusations. The one who is trying to steal valor from a civilian hero like Mr. Chen and a command hero like Colonel Evans. How do you think that story plays? Who do you think they'll believe? The unstable soldier or the governor? He stood up, tucking his pen away. You're a team player, Anya. I read your file. You've always been a team player. Don't stop now. He patted her good arm, a gesture that felt like a violation. Just rest. Heal, and accept the thank you of a grateful state. We'll take care of everything. He left. The door swished shut. Anya was left shaking, not from the cold, but from a profound, helpless rage. They had built a box around her. They had used her medical records, her service file, and her own injuries to discredit her before she could even speak. She was the hero, and they were treating her like a criminal. Later that afternoon, a real cop came by. He was older, rumpled, with a coffee-stained uniform and tired eyes. His name tag read Officer Miller. Ma'am, he said, holding a small clipboard. Local PD? I just got to take your official police report for the insurance and the vehicle logs, not the big investigation, just the nuts and bolts. He was a contrast to Davis. He seemed normal. Okay, Anya said, wary. He asked her simple questions. Her name, her unit, her driver's name, the sequence of the convoy. Then he paused, his pen hovering. This is off the record, Sergeant, but I was listening to the dispatch tapes all night. The first fire chief on scene. He's a friend of mine. His first call, he said he found you. He said, and I quote, I got a female guardsman here. She's unresponsive. She's draped over a civilian in a pickup truck like a damn superhero blanket. I think she shielded him. But, Miller shrugged, looking uncomfortable. The state report says different. The governor's report. So, that's the one that's official. Anya stared at him, a tiny, fragile spark ignited in her chest. He saw it, she whispered. He saw something, Miller said, quickly looking back at his form. But hey, I just write what I'm told. My report just needs to say you were injured and your vehicle was lost. That good with you? Anya looked at this tired local cop. He was telling her, in his own way, that he knew. He was also telling her he was too small to fight it. Yes, officer, Anya said, her voice hollow. That's good with me. When he left, Anya turned to stare at the blank television screen. They had stolen her story, smeared her name, and threatened her career. But the fire chief saw. Officer Miller knew. And Mark Chen. Mark Chen was alive. The rage was still there. But it wasn't helpless anymore. It was cold. It was hard. And it was waiting. The world for Mark Chen was a fog of morphine and phantom pain. He'd wake up convinced his foot was itching, try to reach for it, and be met with the flat, sterile emptiness of the hospital sheet. His right leg was gone from the knee down. A guillotine amputation, they'd called it, clean. But he was alive. He remembered the sound, the groaning metal. He remembered the blinding pain in his leg, the rebar pinning him. And he remembered, clear as day, the face of the young National Guard medic. He remembered her hands, swift and sure, applying the tourniquet. He remembered her yelling, "Cover your head!" And he remembered the weight, the impossible, crushing weight. But it hadn't hit him. It had hit her. She had been his roof, his shield. He'd woken up under her, her cracked helmet pressed to his cheek, her body armor a rigid shell that had saved him from being pulped. He owed her his life. His wife, Emily, was a constant presence, her face a strained mask of relief and terror. Mark, they're calling you a hero, she said on the fourth day, her voice trembling. She was holding her phone. The news, the governor, they said you were trying to warn people. Mark, his head thick with drugs, just stared at her. What? No, I was trapped. The report. Emily, my briefcase, the report, they said it's gone, Mark, at the bottom of the river. The report. His real report. The one his firm had submitted 3 months ago, the one that had been indefinitely deferred by the governor's transportation committee. The report that didn't just mention the storm drains they were now blaming. The report that had a 20-page addendum on critical corrosion and stress fractures on main pylon suspension stays and recommended immediate emergency closure and refit. Budget item 401B, main cable corrosion abatement, deferred. Signed, Governor R. Thompson via committee. He'd been on the bridge during the storm because he couldn't sleep. He had a gut feeling. He was going to take his own photos to leak them if he had to. His guilt was eating him alive. On the fifth day, he got a VIP visitor. Governor Richard Thompson entered the room not with the arrogance of Colonel Evans, but with the warm, empathetic glow of a seasoned politician. The press, a small, approved pool, snapped photos from the hallway. Mr. Chen, Mark, a true tragedy, Thompson said, his voice a buttery baritone. He gripped Mark's shoulder. The whole state is praying for you. Your bravery, trying to warn those other drivers. It's an inspiration. Mark just stared at him. The lie was so smooth, so practiced. The governor's aide shooed the press away. The door clicked shut. Thompson's smile became more professional. Mark, we're going to take care of you. The state is going to take care of its heroes. He sat down. A terrible, unforeseeable event. That storm was one for the ages. It wasn't the storm, Mark croaked. His throat was raw. It was the cables. My report. Thompson's eyes hardened just for a second. Yes, your report on the storm drains. Very prescient. It's why we were already scheduling maintenance. Another lie. But this was the storm, unforeseeable. He leaned in. Mark, the state is going to be paying out a lot of claims. But I see you as more than a victim. I see you as a partner. We're fast-tracking the rebuild, a new state-of-the-art bridge, and I want you to head the Civilian Oversight Committee to make sure it's done right. He slid a packet onto the bedside table. It's a multi-million-dollar consulting contract for your expertise to help us build back better. You and your family will be taken care of. For life. It was a bribe. A blatant, life-changing, seven-figure bribe. Hush money. Mark looked at his wife. She was pale, her eyes wide. This money would mean he would never have to work again. It would mean the best prosthetic. It would mean security. He felt sick. I'll think about it, he whispered. You do that, Thompson said, standing. You're a hero, Mark. We're all counting on you. For 2 days, Mark was tormented. He was an engineer, a man of numbers, of physics, of truth. But he was also a man with a family and one leg. He watched the news, he saw Colonel Evans, he heard the official story, and he never, not once, heard the name Anya Sharma. He'd asked Dr. Washington, the medic, the woman who saved me. She's stable, was all the doctor would say, her face grim. She's on a different floor. On the 7th day, he saw the smear piece. It was on a smaller, right-wing news blog, but it was vicious. Leaked, Keystone Hero Medic has history of insubordination. It quoted an anonymous source at the state investigator's office. It mentioned her confused and agitated state. It painted her as a glory hound, unstable, trying to cash in. The comments under the article were vile. Typical glory hound. Trying to get a bigger check. Thank God for real heroes like Colonel Evans. Mark read the words, and something inside him, something that had been bent and broken, snapped back into place. It was rage, cold and pure. They weren't just covering up their crime, they were crucifying the woman who had saved his life. They were trying to break her. He picked up his phone from the bedside table. He'd had Emily bring it 2 days ago. He made 2 calls. The first was to his lawyer. Don't sign anything. I'm refusing the contract, and I'm holding a press conference. The second was to a number he knew by heart, a reporter at the state's biggest paper, an investigative journalist who had been a thorn in the governor's side for a decade. Sarah, it's Mark Chen. Yes, I'm alive. Listen, I don't have a lot of time. They're lying. They're lying about everything, and they are destroying the woman who saved my life. Her name is Sergeant Anya Sharma. He took a deep breath. I have a digital backup of my original inspection report. The one they lost. The one that proves they knew the bridge was going to fail 6 months ago. How fast can you get here? The story broke like a dam. Anya was in a cab, finally discharged from Mercy General, her arm in a fresh blue sling. She was heading to the National Guard Armory, ready for the fight of her life, ready to file a formal complaint, an IG report, anything. The cab had a small TV bolted to the partition, playing the midday news, and then she saw her own face, and Mark's. Hero Medic gaslit. Engineer saved from bridge collapse, says governor covered up negligence. Anya's heart stopped. The journalist, Sarah, was on screen, her face grim. We have obtained a copy of the original 240-page inspection report filed by engineer Mark Chen 3 months ago. It explicitly warns of critical corrosion on the main cables and recommends immediate closure. The report, we're told, was deferred by the governor's office. The screen cut to a shaky, secretly recorded video from a hospital room. It was Mark. He looked pale, gaunt, but his eyes were on fire. They are lying, he said, his voice raspy. I was not warning drivers, I was trapped. Sergeant Anya Sharma, a medic with the National Guard, pulled me from the wreckage and shielded me with her own body when the pylon fell. She saved my life. The governor and Colonel Evans have been lying to the public to cover up their criminal negligence. They smeared her name to protect themselves. She is the hero. They are the criminals. The rage bait had found its mark. The public, fed a saccharine story of heroism, now tasted the bitter truth of corruption. The backlash was instantaneous and violent. Justice, for Anya exploded on social media. Governor lied and Evans is a coward trended nationally. Protesters, furious at the cover-up, gathered outside the governor's mansion. The Department of Defense, in a terse press release, announced that Colonel Evans was suspended and under formal investigation for conduct unbecoming an officer and potential violations of the UCMJ. Governor Thompson was cornered. His re-election, once a certainty, was now in ashes. He did the only thing a politician like him could do. He tried to get in front of the story. He called an emergency press conference. The location was a masterstroke of cynical PR, the groundbreaking ceremony for the new Keystone Bridge, fast-tracked with emergency funds. Anya received a formal invitation delivered by a sheepish state trooper. The governor requests the honor of your presence to publicly thank you for your service. She knew it was a trap, a circus, a desperate last-ditch attempt to co-opt her, to fold her back into his narrative. She went. She wore her full Class A dress uniform, the deep blue jacket, the medals on her chest, the beret. Her left arm was still in the stark white sling. She was disciplined. She was a soldier. She was the truth. The scene was surreal. Construction equipment was parked neatly. A podium stood on a patch of fresh gravel. The press was there in force, a shark frenzy. Anya saw Mark Chen in the front row in a wheelchair, his wife beside him. He saw her. He nodded, his eyes filled with a profound shared understanding. Anya nodded back. Governor Thompson took the stage. He looked tired. He was sweating despite the cool autumn wind. He gave the speech of his life. It was filled with words like transparency, accountability, and healing. He admitted to communication breakdowns in the fog of a tragedy and unfortunate bureaucratic errors. He never, ever admitted to the crime. And then he turned to Anya. He motioned for her to stand. She did. The cameras swarmed to her. She was immobile, her face a mask of ironclad discipline. "We can never, ever repay those who sacrifice for us," Thompson said, his voice thick with practiced emotion. "We can only honor them. We can write their bravery into our very landscape so that no one ever forgets. That is why, as my first act of this new project, I am proud to announce that this new bridge—" He paused for dramatic effect, his arm sweeping out toward the river. "This new bridge will be named for her." He pointed directly at Anya. "The Sergeant Anya Sharma Memorial Bridge." The press began to applaud, but the word hung in the air. Memorial. A bridge for the dead. A final Freudian slip of erasure. He was honoring her as a monument, not as a living, breathing person he had tried to destroy. This was the rage bait payoff. This was the moment. The governor's aide motioned for her to come to the podium, to accept the honor, to smile, to cry, to validate him. She walked. Each step was precise, measured. She walked past the governor, her eyes forward, and stood at the podium. She was shorter than him and had to adjust the microphone down, a small, sharp, powerful gesture. The crowd went silent. The cameras zoomed in. Anya looked at the governor, then at Mark Chen, then, finally, she looked directly into the cameras, into the eyes of the entire state. "Thank you, Governor," she said. Her voice was not emotional. It was clear, strong, and cold as steel. "I am not a memorial. I am a medic." The air went still. A few reporters gasped. Governor Thompson's plastic smile froze, then began to visibly crumble. "I did my job," Anya continued, her voice gaining strength. "The job I swore an oath to do, to protect others regardless of the cost. And I am honored, I am truly honored that this new bridge, which I am sure will be built to the highest possible standards, using materials that will not fail." She paused, letting the words sink in. She turned her head, locking eyes with the governor, who looked like he'd been slapped. "Will bear my name. The truth, Governor, like a well-built bridge, will always carry the weight." Dead silence. For a beat, 2 beats. Then from the front row came a sound. Mark Chen from his wheelchair began to clap. It was a slow, rhythmic, powerful applause. The fire chief who had pulled her from the wreckage, standing in the back, joined in. Then Officer Miller, then the other cops, then the construction workers, then, finally, the press. It was not polite applause. It was a roar. It was a standing ovation, not for the governor, but for the sergeant in the sling who had refused to break. Anya Sharma stood at the podium, not smiling, not crying. She stood tall. The rage was satisfied. The inspiration was complete. She had taken back her story.